Have you ever wondered what really happens after you hit submit on a job application? It can feel like your resume just disappears into a black hole. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and give you a real behind-the-scenes look at how companies actually decide who gets the job.
So, you've done all the hard work, right? You found that perfect job opening, you polished your resume until it shined, and you sent it off. But what's the actual journey from your computer to a potential job offer? I'll tell you this, it's not magic, and it's definitely not random. It's a system.
Most of the time, your application goes on a journey that looks a lot like this. You can think of it as a series of gateways, and each one is designed to gather a little more information and, well, to narrow down the pool of candidates. We're going to walk through this whole roadmap so you can understand the why behind every single step.
Now, from the outside, I know it can absolutely feel like you're trying to navigate some kind of confusing maze. But what looks super complex is actually a structured system. It has to be, especially when a company is dealing with hundreds or even thousands of applicants for just one role.
And here's the thing. Your very first gatekeeper, it's often not even a person. It's a piece of software. It's called an applicant tracking system, or ATS, and huge companies like CVS Health use them to manage the massive number of applications they get. This system scans for keywords and qualifications, which means your first big challenge is just getting past the robot.
So how do companies build a process that actually works, one that doesn't accidentally filter out amazing candidates? Well, it's not just guesswork, it's really a science, and it's all built on a blueprint of core principles that make the whole system tick.
The very first principle is something called reliability. Just imagine you took a test and it gave you a completely different score every single time you took it. It wouldn't be very useful, would it? In hiring, a method is reliable if it's consistent. So a reliable interview process means that two different interviewers should come to pretty much the same conclusion about the same candidate.
But look, reliability is only half the battle. The real holy grail here is validity. A selection tool is only useful if it's valid, which just means it actually predicts who's going to be great at the job. The most important question a company has to ask is this: does this test or this interview question actually help us find the best person?
And this is a perfect way to think about it. If a company sees that people who score really high on a certain cognitive test consistently end up being their top performers, well then that test has high validity. It's a proven predictor of success, at least for that specific job.
Of course, none of this happens in a bubble. The entire hiring process is operating inside a really strict legal framework. And these aren't just annoying hurdles to jump through. They are the absolute essential rules of the game that make sure there's fairness and equal opportunity for everybody.
Major laws like the Civil Rights Act, the Age Discrimination Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act, they basically create legal guardrails. They're there to make sure that hiring decisions are based on your skills and your ability to do the job, not on stuff like your race, religion, age, or a disability.
And this stuff plays out in really specific ways. For instance, an interviewer legally can't just ask you, "How old are you?" But if the job requires you to be, say, over 18, they can ask if you meet that legal requirement. See the difference? It's all about getting the information they need without crossing a discriminatory line.
Okay, so with all those principles and rules in place, what's actually in the hiring manager's toolkit? Let's dive into the specific methods and tests they use to figure out if you're the right fit.
You're going to see two main types of tests out there. Aptitude tests are all about your potential, your ability to learn something new. Think of it like asking, could you learn to be a great coder? On the flip side, achievement tests measure the skills you've already got. They're asking, how well can you code right now?
And that toolkit goes deep. You've got cognitive ability tests, which are known to be fantastic predictors for really complex jobs. There are personality inventories to see if you'd be a good fit for the company culture. And, my personal favorite, work samples, where they have you do a small piece of the actual job. It's an awesome way to show what you can really do.
And now, for the main event, the interview. You know, we all have this idea of it being a casual chat, but the research is crystal clear. Those unstructured, go-with-your-gut interviews are surprisingly unreliable and just packed with potential bias. That's why the best companies are all moving towards structured interviews, where every single candidate gets asked the exact same set of job-related questions.
You will almost certainly hear a question that starts just like this. This is what's called a behavioral or a situational interview question. And the logic behind it is simple, but it's really powerful. The best predictor of your future behavior is your past behavior. They want a real story, a concrete example of how you've handled a tough situation before.
All right, so the tests have been graded, the interviews are all done, the background check came back clear, all the information has been gathered. So how does a company put all these different puzzle pieces together to make that final life-changing decision?
A really great hiring decision is never about just one thing. It's a holistic choice. The best practice is to combine all the data from all the different tools. You've got the test scores, the ratings from the structured interview, and the facts you get from the background check. It's all about building a complete picture using multiple, reliable data points.
So if there's one big thing to take away from all this, it's that modern hiring is way more of a science than it is an art. The goal isn't just to fill an empty seat. It's about making a fair, defensible, data-driven decision that actually raises the talent bar for the entire organization.
And this whole scientific approach brings us to a really fascinating question for the future. As AI and automation get even more involved in scanning resumes, screening candidates, and maybe even conducting interviews, it leaves us with something important to think about. How do we use these incredibly powerful tools while making sure we don't lose the essential human element in human resources?